Valle, the County Equity Program Manager for the Office of Equity. This is a very important day. This is probably, I've been before you several times. I've sat in the seat presenting countless items. But this is probably the single most important presentation that I make before you today. Because this is not just a presentation. I believe it's a call to action. I brought a number of critical and very important bodies of work or packages of work for your consideration, but again, I say none more important than the one I bring before you. This work is not just a body of work to me, it's very personal to me. I brought before you housing projects, medical services decisions for consideration, millions of dollars in revenue to program, rehabilitation projects, building purchases, and so many others. But what do they mean if racial equity is not in the center of them? And though all of these projects and programs are very critical and very important, what does it all mean if we continue to allow and tolerate racism in this county? So today I challenge us by bringing before you a resolution to declare racism a public health crisis in Sonoma County. I come before you today standing on the shoulders of strong, brave Black women, other women of color who came before me, some who stood beside me in this struggle for racial equity and social justice. And today I stand with those who have felt ignored and erased and abandoned and abused. And I stand with those who, like me, have suffered discrimination, microaggressions, bigotry, physical, mental, and emotional harm, because as a Black woman living, yes, I live in this county, and working in Sonoma County has been extremely difficult. And it's been extremely difficult to remain here. But yet I have. For those of us who have endured years of trauma, who have persevered and simply pushed through, who've often suffered in silence, today, we raise our voices because silence will not serve us today. I must acknowledge your board. I must. For having the courage to take some very bold actions in creating an Office of Equity and hiring a director and staffing and resourcing it. For having the courage to implement a racial equity and social justice pillar. Thank you. I have to acknowledge your board for also having the courage to have some very difficult conversations, for leaning into this work. It's not been easy. I want to acknowledge your ability to sit with me, your only Black female department head. I want to acknowledge your willingness, every single one of you, all 5 of you, for being willing to have some difficult conversations with me and having the ability to lean into those conversations, as uncomfortable as some of them have been, to understand, to acknowledge, and to recognize the racial harm but not to stop there, to do something about it. So thank you. I must also acknowledge all the hard work that's been done by the NAACP, by the Petaluma Blacks, and other community organizations of color in this county to advance race equity. I also must acknowledge my predecessor, Barbie Robinson, who leaned into this work, oftentimes behind the scenes, who recognized the disparities that communities of color were facing during the COVID-19 pandemic and stood up the Latinx Health Work Group and brought in an equity manager for COVID to help inform those disparities. I must also acknowledge Sheba Person Whitley for her bold contributions to racial equity work. I have so many fond memories of me, Barbie, Sheba, and Arlene Jr., Black women in this county, in county government leadership. Unfortunately, these women are no longer here in this county as they found it untenable to live and to work here due to the racism that they endured. We would gather together regularly on what we would call our sister Zooms. We would sing together, we would cry together, we would laugh together, and we would encourage one another to keep going and to keep moving forward through the discrimination and the microaggressions and the bigotry that we faced every day, to fight on in grace. One more day. So today, I acknowledge these brave women. And I acknowledge the historic and the ongoing harms of systemic racism. And I challenge us today to commit to addressing those harms through community-centered action and accountability. And with that, I'll begin this body of work. Next slide. So what is racism?